Hello. Hi. I'm back. I already can tell that. Um, am I lagging? I feel like I am. Ugh, hello. Hello. Happy weekend. Hi. Can you guys see me? Can you guys hear me? Are we good? Let me know if there's lagging. Hi. Yes. Welcome back. Hello. Hi, lovelies. Hi. Let me say hi to everyone. Hope everything is working okay. Technology sometimes. Okay, so let's see. I saw Che, Ash, Cree, Debbie. I saw Lucky. I saw Jessica. I saw Kara. Is it Kara or Kara? Thank you, Jessica. We're not reading text right now. We're gonna get into a text live later, but today I did want to go through reading her appeal from last year. I don't know if I have read this one on my channel before, maybe on the playlist. Hello, Nancy. Thank you, Dana. Hey Cree. Yes, scoop. I'm scooping. I almost was like getting too sleepy to come on here. Why is it like that? Buy me some underwear. What kind do you want? Yes, so I wanted to read this, and then I also have a petition, but they're both really long. So I was gonna do it in one live. I don't know that I can, because they're really long documents. But this one is the Court of Appeals, Ohio, and it is from September 26, 2024, and it's the criminal appeal from Cuyahoga County. And it's a little bit long, but we'll get through it. I read a lot here, so we generally get through these documents pretty fast. So thank you for being here. I know it's the weekend. I was just chilling. Thank you, Bonbon. And we do have more lives. I have a Charlie Kirk live going after this, and then we're going to do MACKENZIE live text reading. So definitely have your notifications on. Thank you for being here. Welcome all new viewers, subscribers, all supporters, everyone in the comments, everyone that supports my channel. Thank you so much. So we're going to get started with this appeal. Honestly, I can't remember. It doesn't seem like I've read it here before, but if I did, it was probably a really long time ago. So I wanted to just go through that again. Oh, sorry. Let's see. So it says defendant appellant MACKENZIE SHIRILLA appeals her convictions for multiple counts of murder, felonious assault, and aggravated vehicular homicide, as well as drug possession and possessing criminal tools. For the following reasons that follow, we affirm. A delinquency complaint was filed in Cuyahoga County Juvenile Court, which alleged that the appellant has committed offenses of aggravated murder, felonious assault, aggravated vehicular homicide, drug possession, and possessing criminal tools. The juvenile court held a hearing to determine whether the case should be transferred to the Cuyahoga County Common Pleas Court General Division for criminal prosecution. At the hearing, the state introduced evidence to support transfer. To assist with the readability, we do not summarize the same evidence twice in this opinion, but rather discuss the salient disagreements between the defense and the state and our discussion of Shirilla's first assignment of error below. The juvenile court found that the state failed to establish probable cause that Shirilla committed aggravated murder, but did find probable cause was established as the remaining charges are transferred the case to the general division. A Cuyahoga County grand jury returned a 12-count indictment charging Shirilla with 4 counts of murder, 4 counts of felonious assault, 2 counts of aggravated vehicular homicide, possession and possessing of criminal tools. The crimes were alleged to have caused the deaths of Dominic Russo and Davion Flanagan. Have you guys heard this before? Have you guys read this with someone before? Let me know. Yes, please hit that like button. Okay, so let me know if you've already read this. Appellant waived her right to a trial by jury, and she elected to have charges tried to the bench. So a bench trial, which is why we didn't see like live, you know what I mean? The court trial completed a judge view visiting several locations along the route traveled by Shirilla, Russo, and Flanagan on July 31st, 2022. The parties stipulated that the defendant is the person who was driving the car at the time of the crash. Michael Galassi testified that he is employed as a police patrol officer with the Strongsville Police Department. On July 31st, 2022, Strongsville police received a 911 call reporting that a vehicle had crashed into a building near the intersection of Progress Drive and Alameda Drive in Cuyahoga County. Galassi responded to the scene and he testified that he observed a black car crashed into a building and the car looked like it was cut in half. There was a heavy front end damage and it appeared that it's cut down the middle. Galassi related to dispatch that the situation was pretty severe. Galassi ran to the driver's side and saw the legs and lower torso of what appeared to be a female. The upper half of the driver's body was on the passenger side underneath the passenger dashboard, caved in on top of her. Galassi ran to the passenger side next, where he observed that a passenger, later identified as Flanagan, was on top of the passenger seat with his back on top of the passenger seat with his back on top of the passenger seat and his head facing the top of the car. Flanagan appeared to be deceased as he does not seem to be breathing and had severe head trauma. Galassi continued searching the vehicle and discovered a third occupant. Galassi related that the passenger seat was reclined all the way and the third occupant was in the passenger seat with Flanagan lying on top of him. On top of him? Whoa. Hey, Ash. Hey, Moonchild. I'll say you're late. Hey, Tay. I think Mackenzie should have had a jury trial. It's easier to convince a few of 12 than one. Yeah, I think so too. Thanks, Ash. And thank you, Ash, for the cash app. Thank you for supporting some new documents that I have incoming. So thank you. It's appreciated. Okay, wait, you guys, I didn't know Davion was on top of Dom. Is that what we just understood here? Please let me know. I don't remember hearing that. The third occupant, Russo, also had severe head trauma. Based on his initial assessment of the crash, Galassi believed that all three occupants were dead at the scene. As officers broke a window and began cutting the airbags, however, they heard mumbling and determined that the driver was still alive. The Strongsville Fire Department arrived on scene and used tools to extract Flanagan and then Shirilla and then finally Russo. Shirilla had significant injuries to her leg and arm. One of the first things she said was, "How is Davion?" Wait. Hey, Mayla's mom. So she didn't even ask for her boyfriend? Yes. So it was Mackenzie driving, Dom in the front seat, Davion in the back. And at the end of the crash, Davion was, I guess, on top of Dom. That's what the document just said. And now she asked, how is Davion and not Dom? I did not know that. I have obviously not read this. I think I've heard that, but I hadn't read it like in a document. There's police sketch of how they were found. I think I might have played that too. I don't know. I started covering this case back in like November and December of 2024. So just now when the calls came out, it started getting like out there again. So that's when I kind of jumped back into it as well. But I had already covered this back in like 2024, like in the fall or winter for sure. And I think I read this document, but I don't remember that part. I just think that's odd. Not like, how's Dom? She probably couldn't see back there, but she could see Dom was dead from where she was trapped. Okay, or maybe she intended for Dom to be the one not alive. I don't know. Don't come for me. I'm just saying maybe either one could be true. We don't know, right? Davion suffered. That's so terrible. Wow. Maybe that's all she saw when she opened her eyes. It's just weird, you know. I think like your subconscious would lead you to the person that you love and you're so connected with, and like she could be asking for Davion because maybe she didn't intend for Davion to be hurt in this. I don't know. So it says one of the first things she said was, "How's Davion?" Emergency personnel called for 2 air ambulances, one for each Shirilla and Flanagan, who was determined to be alive as well. Unfortunately, Flanagan died on the scene before the helicopter arrived. So, like, Davion basically kind of had a chance and just didn't make it. How sad. This is really sad. Not playing devil's advocate, but is it possibly they got the names mixed up? That's true. That could be true too. I'm just saying, we don't really know. Yeah, this is, why do I remember this not being like, this is so sad. I know. Hey, abuelitas, I know. Not us crying. Okay, so Galassi went to the hospital where medical personnel had taken Shirilla. He learned that alcohol testing had been conducted and Shirilla had not been under the influence of alcohol at the time of the crash. Okay, yeah, because I think we were debating this, and when we were talking about the chats or the text, reading the text, we were trying to decide, was it that live? If she was drunk or not. Oh, we were trying to decide if it was the Shroomies or if it was the Mary Jane. So definitely no alcohol. Galassi then returned to the scene to collect evidence. Officers collected 8.1 grams of Shroomies, a digital scale, 2 cell phones, a bong, a bag of Mary Jane, a purse, and a Cadillac key fob. On cross-examination, Galassi admitted that Progress Drive is a cut-through street with a speed limit of 35 miles per hour. He admitted that drivers use Progress Drive as a cut-through to get from Pearl Road to State Route 82, and they often exceed the speed limit traveling on that route. Brett Robinson testified that he is employed as a patrol officer with the Strongsville Police Department and has driven the area of the crash hundreds of times. He described the area as a commercial area and described the route as follows. It is a concrete paved road. It's one of our older paved roads in the city. I would say it's got some wear and tear to it. You can tell there's certain sections of the concrete that are raised. It is a little bit that are raised, so it is a little bit difficult driving. I would say like the speed limit down the road. You can feel the bumps as you're driving in your cruiser. When you drive onto Progress Drive from Pearl Road, it goes from east to west, and there's a series of curves that you will experience in the roadway. Once you get to the end of Progress, it's a T intersection. Robinson responded to the crash scene. The prosecution played recordings captured by cameras inside his patrol car, facing out through the rear and front windshields. The camera recorded Robinson driving at a maximum speed of 54 miles per hour, and he stated that he felt this was as fast as he could safely drive on that road. It is a rough road, so even at that speed, he had to hold onto the steering wheel to make sure that I was in control. Robinson assisted with breaking windows and cutting airbags in the crashed vehicle. Russo and Flanagan appeared to be deceased at the scene. Shirilla was stuck underneath the dash, facing down in her lap. On cross-examination, Robinson admitted that Shirilla was unresponsive when he arrived on the scene. Brett Stanislaw testified that he is employed as a firefighter, paramedic, and captain with the Berea Fire Department. He and other paramedics from Berea responded to the crash scene in Strongsville to assist Strongsville personnel because there were 3 persons needing assistance. The caller for aid came to them just before 6:30 a.m. on July 31st, 2022. Strongsville personnel asked Berea paramedics to provide aid to the driver of the vehicle who was being extricated when Berea personnel arrived. Stanislaw assessed Shirilla when she was first extricated. Her eyes were closed when the assessment began. After paramedics began asking her questions, Shirilla gave a delayed verbal response back to them. Shirilla was confused but alert. She was not oriented to event or place. Stanislaw said that she was confused as to what the events were. What? How does somebody that doesn't have memory of the crash have a memory of one of the people in there? Right, Inner Beauty. That's so sad because if they were found quicker, they may have had more of a chance. Okay, so to play devil's advocate, like she was confused as to where the events were. That could be from results of like a concussion or like the head trauma or something. But it also could it be possible that maybe she doesn't really remember? Or maybe it was her condition. I don't know. So let's see. Okay, so she was not oriented to event in place, but her pulse monitor and sensation and her extremities were normal, which had said ruled out a stroke, seizure, or other significant neurological emergency. Shirilla had several broken bones and her blood pressure was elevated on scene. Her blood oxygen level was 82 when a normal level is 95 or above. Her heart rate was determined to be in sinus rhythm with a normal heart rate. During the medical assessment, Stanislav found a baggie in Shirilla's shirt, which contained mushrooms. He also found a plastic case, and he handed both of those items to a police officer. Okay, wait. So there's a baggie in her shirt with mushrooms. So does that mean that she had time to hide the mushrooms in her shirt because she knew she was going to crash? So then therefore that's intentional? Or am I just a crazy girl? Because if she's driving, why would it be in her shirt? Unless she put it on there whilst driving, or when she thought, okay, I'm going to crash this car, police are going to come, I'm going to put it in my shirt. Or maybe she would just had it in her shirt from when they were at the party the night before. So like, if she did it while she was driving, I'm going to crash this car, the police are going to come, I'm hiding the shrooms in my shirt. Okay, so then you knew you were crashing the car intentionally. That is actually a really good question. It's trauma response to block the event, but often it comes back in pieces over time, says Hot Mess Express. Cree says, I think she was already holding them. What was she holding them for? She was just driving with shroomies. Oh, I'm driving with shroomies. What? Or like, what were they eating them while driving? I mean, like, she just kept it there during transportation. What about the other stuff? Why wouldn't she be concerned about hiding the other stuff in her shirt when she had weed, shrooms? I just think like, why had one thing and not the others? That was probably her stash spot. She was a seasoned dealer. Hey, Stephanie, I think they were selling them that night. Yeah, but like, why in her shirt? Why wasn't the weed in her shirt? I'm just thinking too much into it. But I mean, really, that's a fair question, I think, right? So he found, on cross-examination, Stanislav admitted that a person could have a seizure before medical personnel arrived, and there would be no signs of it during the medical evaluation. His assessment of MACKENZIE was limited to his observations at the moment in time when she was in the ambulance. Stanislav further admitted that a blood oxygen level of 82 is extremely low. Normally, a level that low indicates that a person just went into cardiac arrest or just came back out of cardiac arrest. So it's possible cardiac arrest played a role here with MACKENZIE's case. Melanie Lynn says, we have the same name. I was with the DD before and I would hold the stash because as a passenger, you would not have searched first over the driver. I felt like the fact she had the shrooms makes me think it was last minute decision. Weed is not as serious, at least not in Florida. The intention was to kill Dominic, so probably assumed she had accomplished, says Wendy. KCMO says, yeah, I get what you're saying. Chanel says she didn't have enough pockets. Okay, fair. I'm open to different perspectives of things. Okay, so it says normally blood oxygen that low just went into cardiac arrest or just came back out of cardiac arrest. That level could also be seen in a person with chronic obstructive pulmonary disorder or another respiratory ailment, but it could be the result of a misplaced measurement device or cold fingers. Stanislav testified that during the assessment, Shirilla was confused. Her eyes were closed. She had fractured bones. She was in pain and said she did not know what happened. So did she not know what happened because, wait, that trips me out. Like she didn't remember anything, but she remembers driving. You know what I mean? Like that's a trip. Do you see what I'm saying? Anyone would have cardiac arrest crashing into freaking. I'm almost positive I heard that he had marijuana. I mean, I guess at this point, like, it doesn't really matter, right? Because they were driving with or without it, here, there, everywhere. I mean, they were high all the time, for crying out loud. She is a liar. The impact with the head injury makes you lose your memory. So she I wonder, she said she remembers just driving, right? But not speeding. Head injuries are pretty serious. I guess I'm just trying to determine, like, at what point she forgets how much. Hot Mess, the video of her in the back ambulance, she seemed pretty coherent. I agree, Hot Mess Express. That is on the playlist, that video. Hey, Natasha. But as a former addict, that's where I always put things when I got into a vehicle in case you were pulled over. Okay, so she just hid the shrooms maybe because she thought she was going to be pulled over. And she didn't really care much about the weed. Hey, Barbie Jean. That's interesting. Okay. I guess I just didn't really care. I just drive with it. Don't come for me just because I'm being honest. That was a long time ago. Oh boy. Oh boy. She never planned on living without him, so she knows what she did, says Bellamy. I remember her saying she don't remember anything after she turned onto Progress Drive, which I found odd. Tay says someone purposely driving into a wall at 100 miles per hour in the driver's seat is just crazy. She doesn't speak of being suicidal from what I've seen so far. Something must have seriously set her off. That's kind of where I'm going with my opinion, you guys. Like, I'm just like, wait, something just does not add up here. I remember saying she was wearing the gym clothes or leggings and then no pockets. Okay. They were both wake and bake type of people every day, and that's why they were getting into the shrooms to actually feel it. Fair. Okay, so she says she was in pain and she did not know what happened. Stephen Vanek testified that he's employed as a police detective with the Strongsville Police Department and was assigned to assist in the crash investigation. Mackenzie's vehicle had crashed into the brick wall of a manufacturing facility operated by Plitco Company. When Vanek spoke with the president of the company that operated the facility and took photographs of the scene. He collected pieces of the vehicle from the scene and, after obtaining a search warrant, searched the car involved in the crash. Vanek also collected surveillance video from the business near the crash site. Finally, he used a drone to capture video of the crash site area. Vanek authenticated the photographs and drone video he took, as well as the surveillance videos he collected. On cross-examination, he admitted that there's a fairly sharp turn at the intersection of Progress Drive and Alameda Drive. There is a stop sign at the intersection, but because of a tree cover, the driver does not necessarily see the stop sign until a short distance before the intersection. Christopher Martin testified that he is a 42 years old and a friend of Dominic Russo's family. Martin testified about an incident that occurred in July of 2022 before the crash. On a day that July, Martin was sitting with Dominic's mother, Christine, when Dominic called Christine. Dominic seemed upset. Christine grew upset, and Martin agreed to drive to go get him out of the situation that could have been a bad situation. Martin called Dominic on the way in order to obtain his exact location and ultimately located the vehicle in which Mackenzie was driving and in which Dom was a passenger on the shoulder of Interstate 71. Martin was on the phone with Dominic at the time as both cars were pulling over. Martin heard Dominic and Mackenzie arguing. During the course of the argument, Mackenzie said, "I'm going to wreck this car right now." Dominic moved to exit the vehicle when it came to a stop. Martin testified that he saw a tussle inside the car with Shirilla swinging her hands at him. Hi, my love, Augie. Hello, she is crazy. So crazy, says little Nancy. Illegally says, yeah, Melly's making me think if Mackenzie wanted to walk, all she had to say is she tried to put neutral. Perhaps. Also wondering how Dom didn't yank the wheel sooner, pull the emergency brake, or buckle up. Could definitely be fear and shock. Something's not adding up in my brains. If she passed out, her legs and her arms would have relaxed, therefore she wouldn't be able to press the gas or steer the vehicle. I don't believe she had cardiac event or seizure. I don't believe that either. I for sure don't think so. You guys remember too, the black box of the car, was that the call? The telematics said that, remember, there was no pressure applied to the brake. There was no attempt of pushing the brake. Dominic exited Mackenzie's car, entered Martin's car, and Martin drove the car back to Martin drove Dominic back to the Russo home. Dominic was upset. On cross-examination, Martin admitted that Christine owns 2 houses next door to each other. Christine lives in one house with 2 of her sons, and in July of 2022, Dominic was living in the other house with Shirilla. Martin further admitted that he did not report the incident on the highway to the police. Christine, okay, I know, I get it. Like, maybe they didn't want to involve police for like specific reasons, but I feel like, is this a moment in time where if they had involved police, perhaps it could have been like an intervention into this relationship, like an attempt to stop it from being what it was? Because as you and I know, we're following the text messages from 2020 up till, the crash, and it was very toxic. So, I just question if that would have been handled different, would that made a difference, I guess, is my question to you. So Christine Russo testified that she is Dominic Russo's mother and that Dominic was 20 years old when he was killed. Christine owned 2 houses next door to each other in Strongsville. At the time of the crash, she lived in one and Dominic lived in the other. According to Christine, Dominic and Mackenzie had met in school and had been dating for approximately 4 years at the time of the crash. Christine considered Mackenzie to be part of her family, and they spent a lot of time together over the years. Mackenzie moved in with Dominic in December of 2021 or January of 2022. In the 6 months before the crash, Christine observed that the relationship between Mackenzie and Dominic had become strained. She observed fighting, arguments, disagreements, breakups, and threats. She reported that Mackenzie had become more possessive of Dominic. And we're seeing that, right, in the text messages, which is wild. He was fully reclined. Maybe he was asleep. Good question, hot mess. If she was having a medical emergency, she would have crashed the car earlier. She stayed on the road the whole time. Also very true, Barbie Jean. What about the I love you text sent right before the accident? Yeah, good question, Tay. Hello. Bon says, and in a police interview, she said, what if we say I have a condition? Exactly. Nina says, I feel like she's trying to show off she's dumb and her behavior is horrible, but as a former horrible child, I know she didn't intend to die like that. Okay, that makes sense. Moonchild says, I've seen many Toyotas that have the same accident going a high rate of speed with no brakes as late as the 2018 model. Hey, Robert. Okay, so she says, so here's Christine. Okay, so Christine says 6 months before the crash, Christine had observed that the relationship had become a problem. So at that point, why couldn't she put boundaries up and say, hey, she can't live at the house. It's my property. I'm paying for it. Although Dom is allowed to live on the side house. Like, Mackenzie, you cannot live here. You cannot come here. And if you come here, I'll get a restraining order. I mean, I know that's a bit dramatic, but like, and I'm not a parent, so now you guys probably think I'm maybe a little bit crazy, but I just feel like if it was that many issues, right? Am I crazy or not? Let me know. But I just feel like that makes sense, right? If my child was in a bad relationship where they were putting hands on each other, and if I had a chance to save him or her, I would damn try. Like, no, you can't come onto my property. Like, that's what my dad ended up having to do with this guy I was dating. My dad was not a fan of him, and it was just like a crazy toxic relationship as well. And so then my dad just was like, you know what, you're living under my roof and I'm helping you pay for college. Therefore, he's no longer allowed on my property. And if he doesn't follow that rule, like, I will go legal with it. And that really did kind of separate me from that relationship. And that was kind of like my way out of it. So, and it was pretty toxic at the time. So there was just multiple things going on in my life. So it was very much not a good place to be. And so I feel like if they had that guidance, perhaps things would have been different. Question mark. I don't know. That's just my personal experience, but let me know what you guys think. There came a time in August or September 2022 that Christine and Shirilla were together at Dominic's grave. Christine asked Mackenzie why they did not ask for a ride the day of the crash. Mackenzie responded that they were not effed up. Mackenzie and Christine also communicated by text message about the accident, and Mackenzie texted Christine the following. I'm sure we have already seen this in the text messages between Christine and Mackenzie. She says, I remember turning onto the street and then my vision fades to black. and it really kills me not to be able to remember anything. I promise you I would tell you. I've been asking my therapist why I don't remember. She said because it's because of my trauma. I'm going to try to get myself hypnotized and make myself remember. Christine confirmed the incident on July 17th, 2022, where Dominic called Christine and needed to be picked up immediately. That Christine asked Christopher Martin to pick up Dominic, and the two returned to her house approximately a half hour later, and that Dominic was upset when he returned. After Dominic died, Christine Russo was provided with 3 videos of Mackenzie and Dominic on the phone that had been inside of Dom's house, which she provided to the police. Christine testified that the videos had been made in July of 2022 after the incident on the highway, based upon the content of the conversations between Dom and Mackenzie had been recorded on a phone owned by William Ellis. The phone had been in Dominic's home and was returned to Ellis, who then discovered the video recordings. Christina testified that the videos had been made in July, okay, between Shirley and had been recorded on the phone. Who's William? Was that one of their friends? Who's that? William Ellis? The phone had been in Dom's house and was returned to Ellis, who discovered the video recordings. Is that just like a friend or what? Or is that his dad? I don't remember his dad's name. Google shows Toyotas with accelerated problems were pre-2010. The court allowed the videos to be played over defense objection. They were inadmissible under evidence 404B. In the videos, Mackenzie can be heard threatening Dominic, threatening to break into his house. We have seen that video here before. It's on the videos tab if you want to watch it. Paul Berlinghouse testified that he is 19 years old and has known Mackenzie since they were in middle school together. He knew Dominic Russo through Mackenzie and knew Davion through mutual friends. I also have the Paul Berlinghouse interview on the Mackenzie Shirley playlist. I have all of these interviews if you guys want to go back and watch them. Berlinghouse testified that approximately 11 p.m. on the evening of July 30th, 2022, Russo, Flanagan, Mackenzie, and other friends came to Berlinghouse's house to hang out. They listened to music and a few of them smoked Mary Jane. Berlinghouse did not smoke and he did not believe that Mackenzie did either. The tone of the get-together was quiet, chill, just like a normal sleepover. No one drank alcohol or used any other drugs. Berlinghouse went to sleep sometime after midnight and woke up around 3 or 4 a.m., at which Mackenzie was asleep on the couch. Flanagan was watching a television program with another one of their friends, but Berlinghouse did not see Russo at that time. Berlinghouse went back to sleep, and when he arose later in the morning, all his guests were gone. One of his friends texted him to tell him about the crash, and I couldn't believe it. I'm curious where Dom was when Mackenzie was sleeping on the couch. Maybe he was outside smoking. Carrie says, you wouldn't push the gas and you go limp. Hot Mess says she also threatened to call the police and have Dom arrested for corn when he tried to break up with her because he had pictures of her underage. That is so brutal and foul. Berlinghouse went back to sleep, and when he arose later in the morning, all his guests were gone. One of his friends texted him to tell him, I already read that part, sorry. On cross-examination, Berlinghouse admitted that he did not see Mackenzie and Dominic fighting at the get-together. Everything seemed fine between them. Tyler Croy testified that he's 19 years old. He knew Shirilla because they were classmates in high school, and he knew Dom through mutual friends. Croy and Davion Flanagan were pretty good friends throughout high school and after they graduated. Croy and Flanagan were connected on the social media applications Life360 and Snapchat. Life360 is an application that tracks users' location through their mobile phones and makes location information available to approved connections. Snapchat allowed the two to exchange photographs and electronic messages. Croy was out of state on July 30th and 31st of 2022, but he communicated with Flanagan over Snapchat in the early morning hours of July 31st. When Croy heard that Flanagan had been involved in the car crash, Croy took a screenshot of Flanagan's location data as recorded by Life360 and provided that information to police. The location data showed that Flanagan was at home on Brushwood Lane in Strongsville from 11:35 p.m. to 5:30 a.m. The application recorded that Flanagan was driving from 5:30 a.m. to 5:36 p.m., at which point they crashed. The application recorded Davion was moving at 90 miles per hour. On cross-examination, Croy admitted that his understanding of the Life 360 data is simply from being a user. He is not employed by the application and is not an expert on it. Croy also admitted that while the application records phone usage, it does not document who in particular used Flanagan's phone. Kelly Raja testified that she's 19 years old. She met Shirilla through mutual friends of 2020, and the two became friends themselves. On July 30th, Raja hosted a graduation party. The party was laid back, with friends hanging around by a fire and playing some games. MACKENZIE drove to the party at around 10:15 or 10:30 p.m. with Davion and Dominic. Raja welcomed them, and Shirilla asked Raja if I trip, and Raja responded that she did not. The three guests brought a bottle of tequila and a weed pen with them as she saw Flanagan holding the weed pen. Interesting. Shirilla, Russo, and Flanagan were debating on going to somebody's house, or they were debating on tripping that night. Oof. So they were going to go either to someone else's house and continue the party or trip there. I mean, would one of them have saved their lives? I don't know. Do we know how long the car drive was before the crash happened? I think like 6 minutes. Maybe I'm wrong. Accidents happen on familiar streets every day. Yeah, true. They did do rugs. The text from the night before showed people requesting Dom to bring shrooms in various weights. Okay. The three guests had bought, Shirilla, they were debating on tripping and going to someone's house. MACKENZIE, Dominic, and Davion stayed at the party approximately 25 minutes or 30 minutes, during which time Raja did not see any of them using rugs or drinking alcohol, and they left. Angelo Russo testified that he's 24 years old and is Dom's brother. Russo met Shirilla when she and Dominic began dating, and that Shirilla was over at Angelo's house a lot. But according to Angelo, MACKENZIE and Dominic had broken up many times over the years. In June and July of 2022, Dominic was considered ending the relationship for good. Mo, I miss you. Come back to me, my Mo. Good to see you, love. Nina says, oh my God, that's probably why they left so early, so they could drift the street. Through their text, you see something that they like to do, race and boon. Remember? They like to boon. Sorry, I thought I was going to sneeze. They like to go boon, so they just have been booning? I don't know. But Dom was considering ending the relationship for good, which we already knew. MACKENZIE sent Angelo a few text messages after the crash, which Angelo provided to the police. In August 6th text, MACKENZIE asked Angelo, would you be able to go in Dom's room and grab some photos from his desk of me and him so I could put them in the casket so he can be with me forever? MACKENZIE sent him another message later that month in which she apologized for the crash and said, I know you probably think this is all my fault. I wish that he was here too. This should have never happened. I really do feel bad. It's killing me. Adam McQuaid testified that he is employed as a sergeant with the Brooklyn Police Department. He is a member of the regional crash team that analyzes and reconstructs traffic crashes in the area. The party stipulated that McQuaid is an expert in accident reconstruction and forensic event data recorder and analysis. The Strongsville Police Department requested McQuaid to review data from the event data recorded in the Toyota Camry involved in this crash. From his analysis of the data recorder, McQuaid concluded that the vehicle's accelerator pedal was fully depressed 4.6 seconds before the crash. The engine throttle was also put at 100% until 1.6 seconds after the crash, when the vehicle went airborne as it went over a curb. Within 4.5 seconds of the crash, the vehicle registered a small right turn, then a small left turn, followed by a significant right-hand turn that caused the data recorder to know a rollover event, meaning that there was enough lateral force on the car that the data recorder thought it was turning over. He explained that the car was traveling very fast and that there was a hard yank of the steering wheel, turning the wheel 142 degrees. The car registered a small change in velocity as it hit the curb and then a large change in velocity as it hit the wall. The vehicle hit the wall 1.1 seconds after the hard steering event. Wait. So who yanked the steering wheel? Who yanked it? It says, he explained that the car was traveling very fast and there was a quote unquote hard yank of the steering wheel, turning the wheel 142 degrees. Is that when she like drove into the building, or do they mean like someone yanked it before the crash, meaning like Mackenzie said, I'm going to crash, and Dom yanked it? He was trying to stop her. What? She drove very straight, no veering, no hesitating, and accelerator. Sounds deliberate to me. Tay says Dom. Patty says Dom. Okay, so if he's yanking the steering wheel, then there was a situation before he yanked the steering wheel that made him think he had to do that. So there was something going on, whether it was a fight, whether she was threatening to crash the car, correct? So then if something happened, then was this intentional? We go back to that question. Somebody said could have been Davion. So maybe they were fighting in the car, arguing, and then Mackenzie's like, no, I'm effing crashing this car. And then Dom is like, no, you're a crazy bitch. I don't want to be with you. I'm breaking up with you. Wah. And then Davion's like, oh my God, something's going to happen. And he leans forward and yanks the steering wheel. I don't know about that. I don't know. What do you guys think? I think maybe they were fighting and she said, I'm going to do something, and he yanked it. Happened in seconds. I wonder if it was yanked as the car was going airborne, Dom not quick enough to steer away. Remember, the cops tried to say no one yanked. Someone did. They lied a lot, and maybe she was drifting and Dom tried to avert. It says it right here in this appeal that someone yanked the steering wheel. So it didn't yank in itself is what I'm basically saying. You know what I mean? Hey, Sassy Love. Dom tried to yank the wheel as well, attempting to put it in neutral. So then they were fighting. There was something going on. He was like, I already have, he was thinking, he was in the mindset of, I have to do something because this girl is being crazy. Correct? Nature Nurture says, I believe she was raging just like her text. Yeah, they can't literally say anything, but I mean, well, I don't think they can say lies. But I mean, they're saying it, there was a hard yank. The car, I already read that part. At no point in the 4 seconds before the crash, the brake was pressed. On cross-examination, McQuaid admitted that the data does not show what caused the steering wheel to take a hard right turn. He further admitted that the side airbags deployed approximately 30 milliseconds after the hard steering event. He further admitted that it's accepted in his field that it takes a person 1.5 seconds to react to something they have perceived. The data available from the computer was limited to the last 4.75 seconds before the vehicle hit the wall. Esther Sang testified that she is employed as a trauma surgeon at Metro Health Medical Center. The party stipulated that the doctor is an expert in the field of trauma medicine. Mackenzie was examined on July 31st after the crash. According to medical records, Mackenzie reported pain everywhere. An exam determined that her airway was intact, her breathing and circulation were normal, and her pupils were reacting normally. She was alert and oriented. A physical exam revealed that Mackenzie's right elbow and right knee appeared abnormal, and there was a 2-centimeter laceration to the left knee. Mackenzie's mother informed medical personnel that Mackenzie had a history of POTS, which is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, which can cause a patient to have unusually elevated heart rate. According to medical records, Shirilla denied drug used when asked by the medical personnel, and a blood alcohol test reflected not detected. Medical personnel did not know any cardiovascular, neurological, joint, or muscle symptoms. No symptoms related to sleep disturbances, anxiety, memory loss, disorientation, inattention, or depression were noted, and an electrocardiogram, which was performed, revealed that the electrical function of Mackenzie's heart was normal. A medical record does note that MACKENZIE reported feeling depressed and felt grief, guilt, and shame. She said she, quote unquote, wanted to die and expressed that it was, quote unquote, her fault for killing her boyfriend. Okay, so does she say it's her fault, like in a moment of trauma, like, oh my God, I did this, like, how could I, or did she, like, what? Is that what it was kind of like? Or was it like, yeah, I caused that, like, that was, I know it was my fault because I crashed the car. Like, which is it? Or am I just being drama? I believe Don put it in neutral. MACKENZIE did it on purpose. What if this is just screwing around and they wanted to see how fast she could drive? That would be a crazy plot twist. Anything could be possible. Diane says, which she was never diagnosed with. She was diagnosed with POTS, I believe. They can argue about facts in which they can say anything that the prosecution would have to write. Exactly. She did it. She hit on his side. Beautifully Broken says, I believe Dawn put it in neutral. MACKENZIE did it on purpose. Yes, we're talking about Charlie Kirk Leader. Agreed. Yeah, this is crazy. So she said it was her fault for killing her boyfriend. On cross-examination, Dr. T admitted that a blood oxygen level of 82 would be abnormally low for most people. Dr. T further admitted that the patient with POTS may experience dizziness or a headache. Medical personnel evaluated SHIRILLA approximately 2 hours after the time of the crash. A person who has suffered a seizure or a mini stroke could possibly have recovered within 2 hours. Michael Ruminsky testified that, Michelle Raminsky testified that she is employed as an investigator with the Ohio Bureau of Motor Vehicles Investigations. The B&V records indicate that when applying for a temporary driver's license after the accident in 2022, MACKENZIE attested that she did not have any conditions that results in episodic impairment of consciousness or a loss of muscular control. She further attested that she does not have a physical or mental condition that prevents her from exercising reasonable and ordinary control of her motor vehicle. SHIRILLA received a driver's license on October 21st, 2022. So she got her driver's license before she got arrested. But then they're basically stating here, the reason why they bring that up is because they're saying that if she had a condition and she had if she had POTS, then she would have mentioned that in her sorry, I'm like choking. She would have mentioned that when she got her license. You know what I mean? Oh no. Sorry, I need my water. Whimsy says, why would you drive if you had something that could make you pass out randomly? No, someone just asked about if we were talking about Charlie Kirk. Chill out. Ree says this is also wild either way. Yes, it is. Sorry, Wim. I think I hit you on accident. Sassy says they have to by law. I've had traumatic brain injury and was in coma 3 years and still can't drive. Okay, so that's what they're trying to, sorry, before I choked. They were trying, they're trying to point out that she didn't state she had an issue on her driver's license after the crash. So if you have POTS and you're being investigated and you go get your license and you don't tell them about any medical condition, and then you're going to go to court or trial, whatever, and say, oh, I have a medical condition. That makes no sense, is what they're trying to say. And she went and got another license, exactly Hot Mess Express. If she actually showed some true remorse, I might believe her more. That's what Patty said. Chanel says, was she even able to go to the funerals? I don't think so. Okay, so let's see. SHIRILLA made the same attestations to obtain her previous license, which was issued in April of 2021. Okay, so from the beginning, she never was worried to let them know that she had POTS, because that would probably make her unable to get a license if she loses function. So she probably didn't want to snitch on herself, but also it didn't help when she goes to trial and says, I do have a condition, correct? Mark Sargent testified that he is employed by a consulting firm known as Firm and Explosion Consultants, where he conducts mechanical defect analysis on automobiles. The party stipulated that he is an expert forensic mechanical expert. He was contacted by Strongsville police to evaluate the Toyota Camry driven by MACKENZIE to determine if there were any mechanical failures that may have caused or contributed to the crash. Sargent inspected the vehicle on August 30th, 2022. There had been a recall for the vehicle, but Sargent confirmed that the issue had been adequately repaired by Toyota on this particular vehicle. Okay, so there had been a recall on the car, but the sergeant confirmed the issue had been adequately repaired. Sargent thoroughly examined the vehicle, including but not limited to the accelerator, pedal, throttle mechanics, and brakes. He found no indication of any pre-crash mechanical or electrical failure that may have caused a loss of accelerator control, a loss of braking, or a loss in the ability to steer the vehicle. Sargent noted that the vehicle components were partially buckled over the accelerator pedal, which, combined with the information that there was a slipper found trapped underneath the rolled over component, caused him to conclude that the driver's foot was on the accelerator when the crash occurred. So there's proof that she was pushing on the gas. Therefore, was it intentional? Again, that's the big $1 million question. Teenager, yep. My neurologist told me I had to report my seizures. But mom couldn't remember the doctor. How's that possible? If you're diagnosed, everything is in the system as far as medical records. So yeah, she clearly wasn't concerned with that in 2021, nor after the crash. Sargent testified that he did not see indication that the brakes had been applied for a long period of time in attempt to stop the vehicle before the crash. The brakes appeared to be functional. Sargent researched the mechanical specifications of the vehicle. It was capable of going from 0 miles per hour to 60 miles per hour in 7.5 seconds. It could go from 0 miles per hour to 102.5 miles per hour in 26.5 seconds. Its maximum speed was 129 miles per hour. On cross-examination, the sergeant admitted that the data recorder from the vehicle showed that both front seatbelts were engaged. The data also showed that the gear shift was shifted back and forth between drive, sequential and neutral in the 4.7 seconds before the crash. The gear shift has to be manually moved. Sargent calculated that the vehicle could go from 50 miles per hour to 100 miles per hour in approximately 19 seconds. In 17 seconds, it could go from 60 miles per hour to 100 miles per hour. Sargent further admitted that a hard right turn could be consistent with the driver attempting to maintain or get control of the vehicle. It could also be consistent with a passenger pulling onto the wheel, trying to avoid a collision. It could also have been a physical reaction caused by the impact of the vehicle hitting the ground before becoming airborne. Oh my gosh, that's just crazy. It says here that seatbelts were engaged, but yeah, they said in another document that Dom and Davion didn't have seatbelts, right? My gut said this is truly a fight. It seems like likely based on their relationship. Okay, so were they maybe fighting like before they got to that road? And maybe like that's why Dom or someone pulled the steering wheel? I guarantee that Davion pushed the gear shift into neutral and MACKENZIE put it back into drive. That is so possible. That is so possible. Maybe it was buckled behind him. They both said the boys did not have seatbelts on. Yeah, I remember that. Davion was in the front seat, and I think Dom was underneath. Yeah, they said that at the beginning, that Davion was lying on top of Dom, I believe, facing up. Right? Only MACKENZIE had seatbelt on. Or maybe they had it on and then they didn't. Or maybe they didn't have it on and then they saw what MACKENZIE was going to do and then they put it on. You know what I mean? Like, interesting. It is possible that a driver attempting to brake may accidentally hit the accelerator, but he said that normally in that situation, he would expect to see a data recorder capture the accelerator go from 100% to 0 at some point. On redirect, Sergeant could not recall ever investigating a crash in which the data recorded a 100% accelerator application throughout the entire duration of the incident with no brake application. On recross-examination, Sergeant testified that the hard right turn happened nearly simultaneously with the vehicle hitting the curb. Joseph Fellow testified that he is a medical doctor employed as a forensic pathologist and chief deputy medical examiner by Cuyahoga County Medical Examiner's Office. The party stipulated that Dr. Fellow is an expert in the field of forensic pathology, and the court accepted him as an expert. The medical examiner office concluded after its examination that Davion and Dominic had died from multiple blunt force traumas consistent with automobile crash. Davion's lethal injuries were to his trunk and abdomen. Dom's lethal injuries were to his head. Toxicology testing showed that Davion and Dominic both used marijuana before their deaths. The manner of these deaths was initially classified as an accident based on a report from the Strongsville Police Department indicating that the death was being investigated as a traffic accident. In March of 2023, the prosecution submitted additional evidence to the medical examiner's office and requested a reconsideration of the manner of death for the victims. The additional evidence consisted of transcripts from cell phones, still photographs, video images, and interviews with various witnesses. Based on that additional information, Dr. Fellow amended the autopsy report for the victims, changing the cause of death from accident to homicide. The report indicates that the investigation revealed, quote unquote, the driver's intention of inflicting self-harm and harm unto the passengers in her vehicle. So they didn't find marijuana in Mackenzie's system, but they found it in Dom and Davion's. Is that what we just read there? Because remember they said, well, did they test Mackenzie for that? Because I know earlier, I can't remember, because I know earlier they said no alcohol. But they said it right here. I mean, if there was Mary Jane in Mackenzie's system, it would have come out on these results as well right here, right? Oh, thank you, Andrew. Perhaps before, during the drive, they started fighting and he broke up with her in the car. Tay says, no way, she smokes constantly. I know, exactly. Okay, so let's see. On cross-examination, Dr. Fellow admitted that the manner of death was changed for each of the victims based in part on evidence that Shirilla intended to unalive herself. There it is. She was trying to unalive herself. Let me know in the chat if you genuinely believe, and in the comments, that she was really trying to unalive herself. Elliot Rawson testified that he is employed with the Ohio State Highway Patrol in the Crash Reconstruction Unit. The party stipulated that he is an expert in crash reconstruction. Rawson completed a time-distance analysis in relation to this crash. Rawson revisited the scene of the crash and used forensic mapping surveying tools to take relevant measurements. He reviewed the surveillance video of the crash and analyzed it. He concluded that the vehicle was traveling at an average of 88.86 miles per hour over the 2 seconds leading up to the crash. It was traveling approximately 97 miles per hour before leaving the roadway. He concluded that the vehicle was gaining speed before leaving the roadway. From where it left the roadway to when it crashed into the building, it was traveling at approximately 80.5 miles per hour. Zaki Hazu testified that he is employed as a detective with the Strongsville Police Department. Hazu obtained surveillance video from the city-owned cameras from the date of the crash. Hazu described that the video recorded the Camry approaching Progress from southbound Pearl Road before making a controlled turn from southbound Pearl Road onto westbound Progress Drive. Hazu submitted the suspected shrooms recovered from Shirilla by medical personnel to a laboratory for testing. The laboratory confirmed that the substance was weighed at 6.91 grams and 95% was mushrooms. Hazu interviewed Shirilla in the hospital, during which she made a statement either to him or to her mother in the direction of quote unquote, about to take my license away for 10 years. GPS data from Shirilla's phone recorded that Shirilla's phone was located in the area of Progress in Alameda on July 28th, 2022. So 3 days before the crash, they're saying that she was at the location of the vehicle. I'm sorry, at the location of the crash. Me too, Tay. I don't believe she was trying to off herself. So if so, why was she wearing a seatbelt or not take it off? Was she a regular seatbelt wearer from her driving videos on Snapchat? No, Sassy. No. Hey, look, G. Good to see you. I need to say this for the car malfunction theory. The car was moved into neutral twice and back up into drive twice and 5 seconds before it hit the wall. So then they were fighting and someone kept moving it back and forth. Yes? I don't think she thought any one of them would survive, says Patty. And Natasha said she's where she belongs. Sarah says she did test positive for the THC, but they're saying she wasn't under the influence so much that it impaired her ability to drive. Okay, so she was at the location of the crash on the 28th, 3 days before. I don't know. Was it a coincidence? Some people say that she was there scoping it out. Some people say that she could have just been driving through town. On cross-examination, Hazu admitted that a location ping from a cell phone gives a general location, not with pinpoint accuracy. He further admitted that MACKENZIE was under the influence of marijuana at above the per se level at the time of the crash. Hazu reviewed MACKENZIE's social media history and documented over 100 instances of what he would characterize as distracted or reckless driving. On redirect, Hazu testified that he did not believe that Shirillla was impaired by the Mary Jane when she was driving. He noted that the investigation revealed that she was a habitual smoker and that she smoked while driving and was used to it. After that state rested its case, the defense moved for a judgment of acquittal. The court denied the motion. The defense called the witnesses in its case. Allison Grillo testified that she owns an organic produce market in Strongsville and that MACKENZIE was a regular shopper in her store. She would often come to the store with Dominic and they were together in the store 2 or 3 times a week. And many times that Grillo saw MACKENZIE and Dom together, they appeared to be very loving toward each other. They held hands or had their arms around each other and you could tell they were very much in love. Candace Shipley testified that she is MACKENZIE's aunt. 2 days before the crash, she and Dom went to Shipley's house and stayed for about 3 hours. During that entire time, Shipley saw no signs of discontent or unhappiness between them. They were very much in love and spoke of future plans together. Natalie Shirilla testified that she is MACKENZIE's mother. According to Natalie, she never heard MACKENZIE express suicidal thoughts prior to the crash, and she testified that MACKENZIE was living with Russo at the time. Okay, well, wait, Natalie lied there because if she's talking about she never heard MACKENZIE express suicidal thoughts prior to the crash, meaning like in 2022, okay, fair, Natalie. Well, you're telling the truth. But if you mean you've never heard her say that in general, you're lying because we read the police reports here from back in the day when she was in the beginning of high school or middle school, remember? And the police were called because MACKENZIE was having a mental breakdown. So which one is it, Natalie Shirilla? So it was premeditated. So if it was premeditated, why have Davion in the car, says Tay. I agree. Hello, Uncry Me, my love. Yes, yes, listen to Uncry Me, please. Please give the video a like. Give the like a like. Wait, give the live a like. That's a tongue twister. I don't think she would have thought, any of them would survive. Yeah, I also wonder why Davion was in the car and why she had him in the car if it was premeditated. With respect to, that's all, I've always questioned that. Like if she knew she was going to do that night, then she intentionally allowed Davion to go with them, which means she did it on purpose and killed Davion. But if she didn't know that she was going to do it, that could explain why Davion was in the car. Right? I don't think it's premeditated, says Remy. I think Davion being in the car was a last-minute decision, just like the Idaho 4 case. He didn't expect all those people to be there. Yes, great connection. And I will be covering, I'm going to start covering, I love the Idaho 4 case. I mean, I don't love that it happened. You know what I mean? I like covering it. And I want to start covering it tomorrow. More. We've already covered it a ton here, but I want to start going through some of those docs too. Beautifully Broken says, I think she knew he was done with her and she did on purpose. Tay says that's just another person who could have stopped her or been a witness. Okay, good point. With respect to Mackenzie's physical health, Natalie has seen Mackenzie suffer from symptoms of POTS twice. Natalie described her understanding that the condition can cause low blood pressure and an increased heart rate and can cause someone to lose consciousness. On cross-examination, Natalie testified that Mackenzie was diagnosed with POTS in 2017 at the Cleveland Clinic. Natalie could not remember the name of the doctor who made the diagnosis. Natalie took Mackenzie to the doctor after Mackenzie fell to the kitchen floor on one occasion. The doctors made the diagnosis and gave Shirilla salt tabs to treat the condition. Mackenzie would take the tablets or eat a salty food as needed. Okay, so if Natalie, Shirilla, I have a question for you. If she had POTS in 2017, why didn't you put that in her medical records at the DMV? Again, an instance of where Natalie Shirilla was not being very honest. Don't come for me. It's just the truth. Beautifully Broken says, I don't think the weed affected her as she's been high since she was 13 consistently. I've just never personally in my life have seen someone smoke weed and do something horrifying. If anything, people drinking, yeah, I've seen that. But I've never seen someone, maybe that's just my experience, but yeah, Natasha, we're rolling our eyes at Natalie Shirilla. Natalie's sketchy. I know, illegally bum. So I don't know, that's where I have a lot of questions. And I think the fact that we have a lot of questions we're investigating here worries me a little bit in a good way. I'm like, weed is supposed to make you chill out. I guess depends what you're smoking on. I don't know. But I mean, it is true. Mackenzie did have experience smoking it apparently since she was 13. You guys read that, right? They said it. She had been smoking since she was 13. Okay, so since the diagnosis, there have been a couple occasions where Shirilla would feel herself feeling low and salty or woozy and would sit low in salt or woozy and would sit down and eat some crackers or another salty food. Natalie admitted that she helped Mackenzie apply for a driver's license twice since the POT diagnosis was made, and neither time did they disclose a condition. There we go. Clearly, the person writing this report agrees with my comment on that. Well, Mackenzie isn't calm. She insane. Natalie testified that Mackenzie had experienced a POTS episode a week or two before the crash and reported that it was really bad, and it hadn't been that bad in a long time, and she was scared it was going to get worse. Natalie admitted that she'd not take Mackenzie to a doctor or limit Mackenzie's driving privileges. Okay. So again, Natalie Shirilla, if you were so concerned, why didn't you do shite? Why do we constantly just get reassured that Natalie Shirilla was just a total, you insert the word there. Oh, thank you, Uncrimey. Uncrimey gifted memberships. She making it rain in here. Uncrimey making it rain. Is that something Mackenzie would say? Probably. Thank you, Uncrimey. Appreciate you so much. Thank you. Welcome all new members. 10 new members. Thank you, Uncrimey. You're so sweet. Always supporting me. Thank you. Yes, that was very thoughtful of Uncrimey. Say thank you to Uncrimey, or I'm gonna block you. Just kidding. No, but really. No, but really. Hello. Thank you, Uncrimey. Okay, so it says right there, Natalie failed to admit that. Okay, well, we know that. Natalie's statements on direct that Mackenzie had never threatened suicide was impeached with a police report from March 23rd, 2020. You guys, that's what I just said earlier, remember? I was like, they were once called to her house because Mackenzie was having an episode, whether it was mental or not. We read that police report and they're bringing it up in here. That reflected the police and fire personnel were dispatched to the Mackenzie home, SHIRILLA home, to respond to a 15-year-old female who had threatened unaliving herself. I'm sick of it. See? The police report went on to state that Mackenzie would not be transported to the hospital because her parents did not think her threat was real and did not believe she would hurt herself. Okay, I'm going to make a weird connection here. You know how this comment from that Natalie SHIRILLA didn't think anything would happen to her or whatever, or that it was real. It reminds me, you know how we covered the unknown number and I did a live on that? It reminds me of that psychotic mother from that documentary. You know how she's like, oh, I kept telling her to unalive herself. I didn't think she would do it. It's giving very much that. Natalie SHIRILLA should be in that movie as well. Period. Yeah, exactly. Beautifully broken. So her parents didn't believe she would do anything to herself. So they thought she was doing it for attention. Apparently, back in 2020, the defense renewed its criminal motion before the court returned its verdict and motion was denied. The trial court found Mackenzie guilty of all counts. The court commented specifically on the video exhibiting showing the crash, calling the crash chilling and tragic, and stating that the video clearly shows the purpose and intent of the defendant to cause death. It is noted that Mackenzie made the decision to drive an obscure route, a route she visited a few days before, and a route not routinely taken by her. It noted that Mackenzie chose to drive early in the morning when few people would be around to witness the accident or provide help. It concluded that Mackenzie intentionally pressed the pedal to the floor, taking the car to nearly 100 miles per hour and aiming the car at the brick wall. The court stated that it could only be speculated whether she intended to unalive herself, but it concluded beyond a reasonable doubt that Mackenzie acted purposefully and intentionally to kill Russo and Flanagan. Her actions were controlled, methodical, deliberate, intentional, and purposeful. After the sentencing hearing, the parties agreed with each other as to merger issues, leading the court to sentence Mackenzie on 4 offenses. Count 1 and 2, murder, each unspecified felonies, rug possession, a 5th-degree felony violation, and count 12, possessing criminal tools, and a 5th-degree felony violation. The court imposed a sentence of 7 months in prison on count 11 and 12 with credit for time served. The court suspended SHIRILLA's driver's license for life based on her convictions for aggravated vehicular homicide. Okay, so if she gets parole whenever in 2047? She can get parole, I think. She can't have a license. Well, there's that. If she gets parole. Family members of the victims then addressed the court. The state addressed the court, showing videos and photographs of Mackenzie at a concert and celebrated Halloween during the investigation, and arguing that she lacked remorse for her actions and refused to acknowledge that the crash wasn't intentional. One of the SHIRILLA family members addressed the court as she did Mackenzie. The defense addressed the court and presented numerous letters in mitigation of the sentence. You can see all of that on a video in the playlist if you want to. Calling the crash horrible, terrifying, and tragic result of this selfish, intentional, and cruel decision by Mackenzie, the court sentenced her to serve an indefinite sentence of 15 years to life in prison. On each of the unaliving counts, the court ordered all sentenced to be served concurrently. SHIRILLA appealed, raising the following assignments of error for review. Assignment of error 1. The juvenile court erred when it concluded that the state presented sufficient credible evidence to demonstrate that probable cause to believe that Mackenzie purposely and or knowingly caused the deaths of Dominic and Davion. Assignment 2, the state failed to introduce sufficient evidence to sustain the conviction in violation of Mackenzie's right to due process of law as guaranteed by, et cetera, of the United States Constitution. Assignment error 3, Mackenzie's convictions are against the manifest weight of the evidence. Assignment 4, the trial court erred by permitting the state to introduce character and other acts of evidence during its case in chief, thereby depriving Mackenzie of her right to a fair trial. So they're basically saying that, the previous incident in the car when she was saying that she was going to crash it, a month before the crash or whatever, that the fact that they used that against her made her not get a fair trial. That's what they're basically saying, which is ridiculous because I guess I could kind of see it, but not really. It wasn't like it was years and years ago. It was like a few months prior. If it was like the 1800s, then I would be like, okay, don't bring it into trial now. That was like decades and decades ago. But if it was just a month, I think it should be allowed. I do. That's just my opinion only. I am no lawyer. The trial court erroneously precluded the defense from introducing testimony or evidence relating to this July 17th incident, thereby prejudicing Shirilla's constitutional right to due process and a fair trial, as well as her right to present a meaningful and complete defense. We address Mackenzie's assignment of error in a slightly different order than she presented them. Mackenzie contends that her convictions were not supported by sufficient evidence. While she challenges the convictions on each counts of 1 through 8, we note that counts 2 through 8 merge into other offenses at sentencing. Therefore, any error with respect to the sufficiency or manifest weight of the evidence on counts 2 through 8 is harmless beyond a reasonable doubt. A challenge to the sufficiency of the evidence supporting a conviction requires a determination of whether the state has met its burden of production at trial. Whether the evidence is legally sufficient to support a verdict is a question of law. An appellate court's function when reviewing the sufficiency of evidence to support a criminal conviction is to examine the evidence admitted at trial to determine whether such evidence, if believed, would convince a reasonable juror of the defendant's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. We must determine whether, after viewing the evidence in light most favorable to the prosecution, any rational trier of fact could have been found the essential elements of the crime proven beyond a reasonable doubt. The elements of the offense may be proven by direct evidence, circumstantial evidence, or both. Circumstantial evidence and direct evidence have equal evidentiary value. A person commits murder by purposely causing the death of another. Mackenzie concedes that the only I kind of like that. What did Uncrimy say? Oh, not Uncrimy calling me out for saying something wrong. That is so something my sister would be on my ass for right now. She would be coming for me. She's probably going to, along with Uncrimy. Only because I love Uncrimy, I'm not going to block her. I'm just kidding. She chose to not be tried by a jury, obviously because her and her lawyer thought a judge would be more favorable. It's the weekend. Give me a break, you guys. Maybe I need dabs. I don't know. You made up for it with Makilla. Okay, is that her new nickname here at Mellyverse? Makilla. Why am I so dyslexic? I think because I'm not going. I work in the healthcare field. So like during the week, I'm like, boom, boom, boom. I'm like literally just bouncing off the wall. So I think I'm more like put together. But yes, okay, back to Makilla. Let's see, a person. Okay. So Mackenzie concedes that the only issue in dispute was whether Mackenzie crashed the vehicle purposely. She argues that there was no evidence that she acted purposely. We disagree. A witness testified that less than a month before the crash, he had heard MACKENZIE threaten a car crash in which MACKENZIE and Russo were traveling. Crash reconstruction and computer data from the vehicle revealed that MACKENZIE, on the date of the crash, made a controlled turn and then accelerated to the point that the pedal was pushed all the way to the floor while the vehicle traveled at approximately 100 miles per hour. Someone inside the vehicle manually shifted the gear shift into neutral, but it was forced back into drive as the vehicle continued hurtling forward. MACKENZIE never took her foot off the accelerator and never depressed the brake in seconds leading up to the crash, even as the car passed through an intersection when airborne, landed, continued through an industrial sign and into a brick wall. So wait, a saint is late. I'm crying. You're killing me. You're killing me. Is dabs what you smoke in a vape? Dabs is what you smoke. I don't know. Dabs is what you smoke with, like, I think you can smoke it with like a Puffco. Makilla or Makilla? Makilla. Did you see? Oh yeah, you guys are about to see a couple of the clips on a video that I'm dropping of them. I like the name more. Yes, Augie, I do too. Or a torch. Thank you, Bonbon. So basically, who moved the gear shift? Who did that? Was that Dom or was that Davion? Why didn't they fingerprint that shit? I wish they would have. You know what I mean? Like, it would have been nice to know who did that. Davion. We all think it was Davion. She was saying she wasn't affected by weed anymore, that she would have crashed if anything was normal. Was that? Yeah, she was used to driving like that. Some people get used to it. I'm not saying it's okay. Don't go doing it. But I'm just saying the THC in weed is extremely high compared to even 10 years ago, says J-Lo. We are over here forming our own language at Belliers. I love that. I do. I really do love that. Makilla's very fitting. I know. Sounds like two people grabbing at it. So Dom and Davion. I have questions, and it's kind of like any other true crime case that we cover, like Chris Watts, Brian Kober. No one will ever really tell the actual truth if it doesn't benefit them. And so this is one of the situations where whether MACKENZIE did it intentionally or not, she's never going to tell the truth. And whether we believe her when she says she didn't, that's on us. But like, it's not like Brian Kober is going to sit there and be like, I did this and this and this because of this. It's just, he's a killer. He's not going to do that. These type of people don't come with ethics and morals. Like, they're literal monsters and psychopaths. So like, we're not ever going to get the truth from them. And I don't know if we'll ever get it from MACKENZIE either, kind of sucks. Medical experts examined SHIRILLA after the crash and could find no evidence that she had been afflicted with a neurological or musculature condition that could have contributed to the crash. A mechanical expert examined the vehicle and found no sign of latent defects that could have contributed to the crash. This evidence was sufficient for the fact finder to conclude beyond a reasonable doubt that MACKENZIE crashed the vehicle purposely, intending to kill Flanagan and Russo. We therefore overrule MACKENZIE's second assignment of error. MACKENZIE contends that her convictions were against the manifest weight of evidence. A manifest weight challenge attacks the credibility of the evidence presented and questions whether the state met its burden of persuasion at trial. See, we learned so much reading these documents. A manifest weight challenge attacks the credibility. Okay. When considering an appellant's claim that a conviction is against the manifest weight of the evidence, the Court of Appeal sits at a 13th juror and may disagree with the fact finder's resolution of the conflicting testimony. The reviewing court must examine the entire record, weigh the evidence and all reasonable inferences, consider the witness's credibility, and determine whether in resolving conflicts in the evidence, the juror of fact clearly lost his way and created such a manifest miscarriage of justice that the conviction must be reversed and a new trial ordered. Reversal of manifest weight weight grounds is reserved for the exceptional case in which the evidence weighs heavily against the conviction. MACKENZIE contends that the weight of evidence establishes that Shirillo and Russo's relationship was in a good place at the time of the crash. Berlinghouse and Braja saw them shortly before the crash and did not report anything out of the ordinary. Others who knew MACKENZIE and Dom, Grillo Shipley and MACKENZIE's mother, also testified that the two seemed to be in love. Shirla points out that her POTS condition may have led to a medical issue that caused the accident, or she may have had other medical emergency like a heart attack or seizure. Shirla posited that the crash could have been caused by distracted driving or simple recklessness, contrary to the testimony of Detective Hazoo that MACKENZIE often drove distracted or recklessly, according to her social media. She argues that in light of all of these possible other explanations, the manifest weight of the evidence weighs against the verdicts. It's funny because, like Natalie Shirla says that they were in love and that people saw him be in love. And you guys, me and you guys, we're over here like, that's total bull because we're reading all the texts from 2020. We didn't just cut through 2022 for clout and views. We're like reading all of them, The parents are grasping at straws. Yeah. And so we get to see that other side of their relationship. And like, we know that they go back and forth, right? Like they could be very lovey and they could not. Like we see that intensely while we're reading the text messages. After a careful review of the record, we find that this is not the exceptional case where the evidence weighed heavily against the verdicts. A conviction is not against the manifest weight of the evidence solely because a fact finder heard inconsistent or contradictory testimony. The decision whether and to what extent to believe the testimony of a particular witness is within the peculiar competence of the fact finder who has seen and heard the witness. Here, the record reflects that the fact finder was persuaded by the forensic reconstruction evidence and other evidence showing the maximum acceleration leading to the crash, in connection with MACKENZIE's previous threats and the fact that her cell phone had been located in the area of the crash in the days leading up to the crash. While certain friends and families testified about the loving nature of the relationship between Dom and MACKENZIE, other witnesses testified that July 22 also saw significant fighting between them. The latter claim was corroborated by video evidence. Testimony established that these fights involved MACKENZIE threatening Dominic and hitting him. In one instance, according to a witness, MACKENZIE threatened to crash a vehicle that she and Dom were traveling in together. While Dr. T testified that it is possible that Shirilla could have suffered a medical emergency like a seizure or mini stroke while appearing normal in the medical examination, other evidence makes this potential explanation seem unreasonable. For example, MACKENZIE denied having adverse medical conditions when applying for a driver's license both before and after the crash. Moreover, someone manually moved the gear shift back into drive after it was moved into neutral seconds before the crash. There was no evidence presented that any medical condition could have caused MACKENZIE to simultaneously lose the ability to take her foot off the accelerator or hit the brakes while also intentionally manipulating the gear shift. A distracted driving incident is also not consistent with the forensic evidence, which shows that MACKENZIE never took her foot off this accelerator, even as the car hit a curb, when airborne, landed, and continued toward a brick wall. MACKENZIE argued her case to the trial court and that the court was permitted to reject any portion of the state's evidence or witness testimony that was inconsistent or otherwise unbelievable. We cannot say that this is the exceptional case in which the evidence weighs heavily against the court's verdicts. We therefore overrule Shirilla's third assignment of error. In her first assignment of error, MACKENZIE contends that the juvenile court erred by transferring her case to the General Division of Common Pleas Court. Her argument largely tracks her sufficiency argument above, namely that the evidence presented during the probable cause hearing established that Shirilla and Russo were in love and getting along perfectly fine before the crash, and that there was insufficient evidence that MACKENZIE purposefully crashed the car. Juvenile courts possess exclusive jurisdiction over children alleged to be delinquent for committing acts that would constitute a crime if committed by an adult. However, under certain circumstances, the juvenile court has the duty to transfer a case or bind a juvenile over to the adult criminal system where the juvenile may be tried as an adult. There are two types of transfers under Ohio's juvenile system: a mandatory transfer and discretionary transfers. Mandatory transfer removes discretion from the judge in the transfer decision in certain situations. Discretionary transfer allows judges the discretion to transfer or bind over to adult court certain juveniles who do not appear to be amenable to care or rehabilitation within the juvenile system or appear to be a threat to public safety. After a careful review, we disagree with the appellate's contention that the state failed to establish probable cause in the juvenile court. In other words, if a child is eligible for mandatory bindover and if probable cause exists to believe that the juvenile committed the act charged, the juvenile court must enter an order of transfer. Okay. To establish probable cause in a bindover proceeding, the state has a burden to present credible evidence supporting each element of the offense. Because she was like before 18, remember? Before the crash. And younger than 18, she was 17. So in considering whether probable cause exists, a juvenile court must evaluate the quality of the evidence presented by the state in support of probable cause, as well as any evidence presented by the respondent that attacks probable cause, to determine whether the state has presented credible evidence going to each element of the offense charged. As a result, our review of the juvenile court's decision is mixed. We defer the juvenile court determinations regarding witness credibility, reviewing those determinations for abuse of discretion. However, whether the state has presented sufficient evidence to support a finding of probable cause is a question of law. We review de novo without any deference to the juvenile court. At this stage of the proceedings, the state was not required to prove the truth of the allegations against MACKENZIE. It had to present credible evidence showing probable cause supporting each element of the offenses charged. Based on that evidence presented to the probable cause hearing, we disagree that MACKENZIE that the state failed to meet this burden. As detailed above, the evidence established MACKENZIE pressed the accelerator pedal to 100% acceleration, causing the vehicle to reach approximately 100 miles per hour before crashing into a brick wall, killing Dominic and Davion. Whether there was probable cause to commit this crime turned essentially on whether there was credible evidence that MACKENZIE purposely caused the crash. There was. That's just crazy. At least we are honest cheaters. Oh, let me find out you cheated. Now that I'm going back and yeah, Patty knew. Patty knows me too. Oh, okay. I see now. Uh-huh. Okay. I see you cheaters. Mm-hmm. You thought you were going to pull one on me. Yep. They all been cheating. Patty's like, except me. We all did? I am appalled. I am appalled. At least we're honest cheaters. You know what? At least I do give you that. Ahmed says it meant nothing. Why are you guys cheating like that? Not me, Melly. I'm an angel. Thank you, Natasha. Thank you. Kyrie says it meant nothing. At least you heard it from us and not someone else. Wait till she gets her book out. I'm about to get the book out. Literally. It's coming to that time, Patty. You guys better not. I'm going to pretend I didn't see any of that. SHIRILLA was examined by medical professionals after the accident. There is no medical evidence that she suffered any adverse medical event that caused the crash. The vehicle was examined by an expert who determined that there was no evidence that a mechanical failure caused the crash either. The state also presented credible evidence of potential motive MACKENZIE may have had for causing the crash. Investigators testified that Russo's brother told him that Dom was considering ending the relationship. Russo's mother told him about the incident on the highway in which Russo and SHIRILLA tried to crash the car. While there was evidence suggesting that SHIRILLA communicated with Russo that Russo was at fault for the highway incident, and while the state could not present evidence establishing that SHIRILLA was angry at Dom or otherwise upset immediately before the crash, the state only needed to establish probable cause at this stage of the proceedings. After reviewing the evidence presented at the hearing, we conclude that the state did establish probable cause, and therefore there was no error when the juvenile court ordered the case transferred to the General Division of the Common Pleas Court for prosecution. We overrule SHIRILLA's first assignment of error. In the fourth assignment, she contends the trial court erred by allowing state to introduce, oh yeah, we already read that part, the improper character or other acts. The trial court granted the state's motion. The state stated that the evidence was not offered to show SHIRILLA's bad character, but rather to prove Mackenzie's motive, intent, knowledge, absence of mistake or accident, and to provide context with respect to Mackenzie's relationship with Russo. Specifically, the state argued as follows. Mackenzie's past threats and aggressions towards Dom provide an important perspective of how Mackenzie responds in situations where she is displeased or disagreement with others. Further, the evidence shows that Mackenzie was aware of her ability to cause harm to the victims, especially by means of her own vehicle, and how she could use the power of threats and control to ultimately reach the outcome she desired. Pursuant to evidence, whatever number, evidence of any other crime, wrong, or act is not admissible to prove a person's character in order to show that on a particular occasion the person acted in accordance with the character. However, evidence of other crimes, wrongs, or acts may be admissible for another purpose, such as proving motive, opportunity, intent, preparation, plan, knowledge, identity, absence of mistake, or lack of accident. The key is that the evidence must prove something other than the defendant's disposition to commit certain acts. Thus, while evidence showing the defendant's character or propensity to commit crimes or act is forbidden, evidence of other acts is admissible when the evidence is probative of separate, non-propensity-based issue. For other acts evidence to be admissible, the other act's evidence must be relevant, the other act's evidence must be introduced for a purpose, then proving propensity, such as one or more of the permitted purposes set forth, must be substantially outweighed by the risk of unfair prejudice. Evidence is relevant if it has any tendency to make the existence of any fact that is of consequence to the determination of action more probable or less probable than it would be without the evidence. Let's see. Courts are precluded from admitting improper character evidence under evidence R 404, but have discretion to admit other acts evidence that is admissible for permissible purposes. Here, the challenged evidence went to a material issue that was actually in dispute between the parties, whether Mackenzie purposely crashed the vehicle. Evidence that Mackenzie and Dom were fighting in July of 22, including days before the crash, that Mackenzie had threatened Russo, and that she had threatened specifically to crash a vehicle in which they were both driving was directly and meaningful, relevant, and probative of Mackenzie's motive, intent, and lack of accident or mistake in crashing the vehicle. After careful consideration, we find that the probative value of this evidence for this non-propensity purposes was not substantially outweighed by the risk of unfair prejudice, confusion of the issues, or misleading the fact finder. SHIRILLA also complains that Detective Hazu testified that Mackenzie was seen in social media photographs smoking Mary Jane in a vehicle. She says that the only reason this was introduced was to portray her as an immoral drug abuser who was prone to engage in criminal activity. We disagree. As an initial matter, we note that the defense opened the door to this line of questioning in its cross-examination of Hazu, focusing on the results of Mackenzie's blood draw that showed she had been under the influence of marijuana at the time of the crash. The context of the state's line of questioning was not to introduce propensity evidence, but rather to introduce relevant evidence probative to the non-propensity purpose of the absence of accident or mistake. After careful review, we find that the probative value of this evidence for this non-propensity purpose was not substantially outweighed by the risk of unfair prejudice, confusion, or issues of misleading the fact finder. Because there was no error in the trial's court allowance of the challenged evidence, we overrule the fourth assignment of error. We're almost done here, guys. In her fifth assignment of error, Mackenzie contends that certain of the trial's court rulings denied her a fair trial and prevented her from presenting a meaningful and complete defense. Specifically, she argues that she was prevented from cross-examining Martin and Jesus regarding text messages Russo sent on the day of the crash. Defense counsel did not proffer to the trial court the substance of these messages, but certain of the messages were introduced in juvenile court proceedings. The scope and limitation of cross-examination are matters within the sound discretion of the trial court. We find no abuse of discretion here. First, Shirilla's suggestion that the trial court excluded the additional text messages themselves is not corroborated by the record. MACKENZIE complains about the following exchange during Martin's cross-examination. So she claims that some stuff was missing from the text messages that would have helped her. Do we agree with that? She must be diving through the prison. I didn't know that existed. I actually pity the people she's locked up with. Only that one time I already told you it was an accident. If MACKENZIE got away with this, she would have done it to the next guy. She's a stage 12 clinger. Okay, so she says, so defense counsel, are you aware that the day Dom texted MACKENZIE? Prosecutor says objection. The court says sustained. Defense counsel says no further questions. Shirilla further complains about the following exchange during Detective Jesus' cross-examination. Defense counsel says, you were asked on direct about text correct by the prosecutor. Jesus says, I don't recall. Defense counsel says, you don't recall? Jesus says, no. Defense counsel says, well, Dom texted people that night that he loved them, correct? Prosecutor says, objection. The court said, sustained. We need to come to sidebar. Come up here. Then there's a sidebar. The court says, as for the last question, which clearly the detective was not asked on direct, it is stricken for the record. Defense counsel says, my apologies, Judge. Oh, I forgot about that. So Dom texted people that night he loved them. So you guys, does that mean he knew something was going to happen to him? Yeah, congrats, Remy. I saw that. I'm welcoming my first daughter this December. Wish us luck. Wishing you all the luck. So Dom was texting people that he loved them. Was that a coincidence, or was it because he knew he was going to die? In neither instance did defense counsel attempt to lay a foundation establishing how Martin could have known whether Russo texted MACKENZIE on the day of the crash or regarding Jesus' knowledge of Russo's text messages. More importantly, however, MACKENZIE never attempted to offer the text messages himself into evidence and did not proffer their contents to their trial court on the record. She seems to focus her appellate argument on a text message that MACKENZIE sent to a third party about the incident on July 17th, which she stated that MACKENZIE said Dom attempted to grab her steering wheel and try to cause an accident. She does not offer an explanation as to how either of the trial court's evidentiary rulings identified, which concerned Russo's text messages to others, had the result of excluding a message Shirilla sent to a third party. Okay, would that text have made a difference? If there was a jury trial, would that have made a difference to you guys? If you guys saw a text message where Dom was acting like this, we have seen that in the text that we're reading, but like if it was brought into court, do you guys think that would make a difference? In the absence of a profferent having been directed at only these two evidentiary rulings, neither of which seem to exclude further foundation and development into the text messages that MACKENZIE claims were excluded, and where defense counsel chose not to delve into those areas with these witnesses. We cannot find the abuse of discretion in the evidentiary rulings identified. We therefore overrule Shirilla's fifth assignment of error. After oral argument, the parties were ordered by the court to brief the issue of whether or not there was compliance in the matter and the effect, if any, of the assignments of error or verdict if there was no compliance. Ohio states the cause of death and manner and in mode in which the death occurred as delivered by the coroner and incorporated in the coroner's verdict and in the death certificate filed with the divisions of vital statistics shall be legally accepted manner and mode in which such death occurred, and legally accepted cause of death unless the Court of Common Pleas of the county in which the death occurred after a hearing directs the coroner to change his decision as to such cause, manner, and mode of death. The Office of the Cuyahoga County Medical Examiner Office conducted autopsies on the persons of Dom and Davion. The coroner's verdict dated September 12, 2022, as to the manner was recorded as accidental. The report of the autopsy of Dominic, also dated October 12th, was also listed as accidental. Both autopsies were conducted by Dr. Fellow, a forensic pathologist, and a chief deputy medical examiner for Cuyahoga County. Dr. Fellow testified that in March of 2023, he was asked by the Office of the Cuyahoga County Prosecuting Attorney to review additional documents which had been generated by the Strongsville Police Department but were never submitted to the Office of the Medical Examiner. According to Dr. Fellow, after he reviewed the documents submitted to him, he changed the manner of death of both Davion and Dom from accident to homicide. In the case at bar, the record is void of any evidence that the Cuyahoga County Medical Examiner complied with the statute. In her supplemental brief, MACKENZIE argues that a medical examiner lacks the statutory authority to amend a determination as a manner and mode of a person's death as memorialized in a verdict and death certificate without being ordered to do so by a court. Yeah, I don't think that matters. I just think that they found more evidence for them to change that manner of death. SHIRILLA argued that the medical examiner's amended conclusion that Russo and Flanagan's death were homicide resulted in impropriety and prejudice. She further argued that the amended autopsy reports were created solely for the purpose of using them against her in this criminal trial and were thus testimonial statements implicating the confrontation clause. The state responded by arguing that MACKENZIE waived all but plain errors as to those issues does not apply when a medical examiner decides to change its own determination. The state is correct that we review these issues for plain error because neither was raised below. After careful reconsideration, we decline to find plain error here, but do caution the state as the need to comply with RC 313. We are convinced not to exercise our discretion to find plain error here because we are not convinced that any error was obvious or that an amendment of the autopsy conclusions affected the outcome of the trial or resulted in a manifest miscarriage of justice. We find that in this case, the change of the manner of death of Davion and Dominic by the Office of the Cuyahoga County Medical Examiner did not affect the verdict in this case. Although the trial court had before it evidence of the change as to the manner of death by the Cuyahoga County Medical Examiner Office, there was other evidence to support the verdicts. Dr. Fellow testified that it was his choice to amend the conclusions. He summarized what he reviewed in coming to that determination, and he identified the reason why he came to those conclusions. In other words, the fact finder heard the circumstance of the amendment and could judge those circumstances as well as the credibility of evidence that caused the amendment. Finally, in light of the precedent from this court, any error in procedure under the circumstances was not obvious. This court held that 313 contemplates a situation where a third party seeks to have a trial court direct a coroner to change the manner of a person's death, unlike the situation here. Having overruled Shirilla's assignments of error for the reasons stated above, we affirm the court finds that there was reasonable grounds for this appeal. It is ordered that the appealee recover from the appellant the costs herein taxed. It is ordered that a special mandate issue of this court directing to the Cuyahoga County Court of Common Pleas to carry this judgment into execution. The defendant's convictions have been affirmed. Any pending bail is terminated. A certified copy of this entry shall constitute the mandate pursuant to the rule. And we finished it. That's wild. Do you think she told her mom what really happened? I think she did, and her mom enabled her and everything. And she's keeping a secret now? I could see that. I can see that. Her mom was totally clueless. Millie's on a roll. Hey, Sarah G. Is this a random live? Yes. Her POTS makes the heartbeat low, and there's a photo. You guys, we know how she acts. I'm about to show you guys into Snapchats and stuff on a pre-recorded video, but like, I think she could drive. I have a hard time believing this was an accident. I really do. No matter what we read, even this appeal from 2024, I'm like, yeah, I still don't think that that it was an accident. Do you guys? I feel the mom enabled her. Yeah, the mom did. It would be one thing if her parents didn't know they were in an intimate relationship, but they did and did nothing to stop it. How can they cry wolf now that he took advantage of her? That's also very true. The Shirilla is what would absolutely cover in life for her. They are delusional. Yeah, exactly. The mother put Mackenzie at birth control on 14. She had POTS, but has no problem smoking weed, dabs, and doing shrooms and acid. Yeah, I know. That's the whole thing. She went to get her license twice and she never reported it. So obviously she wasn't that worried about her condition. I mean, if someone has it and it's detrimental, then I feel for them, but like she wasn't acting that way. You know what I mean? Like not at all. She was just being a rebel. Not an accident. I think she wanted to be like Romeo and Juliet and like die together. I don't think she wanted to die. Maybe. I mean, we'll never know if she was actually like a real depressed person, but I don't think she wanted to die. I've never been mad, but I've been mad, but I've never said that. Yeah. And we've never heard her talk about any medical issues in the text yet. Yeah. Yes, Abuelita's the video where she said she killed us. Yes. Jane says my niece has that condition and drives. Okay. Didn't she have her seatbelt on? She did. No accident. Like they don't care. I heard one interview they killed Mackenzie because they liked Mackenzie because she was prettier and the other sister was kind of slow. I did hear that. Mm-hmm. Has a prison reported a POTS episode? I don't think so, which is ironic. So good question, Diane. Sounds like narcissistic to me to pick a favorite like that. Yeah, Natalie Crumley says illegally blonde. My favorite child now seems to live vicariously through Mackenzie. So cringe. I agree. Okay, so we read that. I'm not going to read the other document now because this one took me longer than I thought. So I'll make that a separate live, but not today. We'll maybe read I have the petition for post-conviction relief that I want to read also, but we can do that tomorrow or another day because we do want to do a live for Mackenzie text reading tonight. And then I also want to do another Charlie Kirk live. So thank you so much for being at this live. I'm going to eat some food and then I'll come back on live again. Definitely make sure you have your notifications on. Shout out to all my mods for being here. Thank you, Uncrimey, for bringing members to Mellyverse. It is so appreciated. Thank you guys for hanging out. Definitely make sure you give me a like, please. Hype. Do whatever. Help Mellyverse grow. Thank you so much for being here. Her pediatrician probably mentioned possible POTS, but it doesn't seem like a formal diagnosis. Why wouldn't her lawyer call her doctors to the stand to testify? Good questions. Good questions, sassy pants. Good question. And then there was no one there. It was a bench trial. Thanks, Melly. We promise we won't cheat anymore. Let me find out you guys keep cheating. Thanks, Patty, for being here. Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. I'll see you in a little bit. I'm going to eat, and then I'll come back. The Mackenzie live is already scheduled, so I'll see you guys in a little bit. Like I said, please turn on your notifications and make sure you hit the like button on the way out. See you on the next one. Bye.